chapter. I'm just going to read in your hearing verse 34. Luke, the 21st chapter, and verse 34. Jesus, in speaking to the multitude, said, "Be careful, or your hearts will be weighed down with carousing, drunkenness, and the anxieties of life. And that day will close on you suddenly like a trap." I want to speak to us for the next few minutes. The sermon title, How Far from Our Destination? How far are we from our destination? And are we almost there? Let us bow our heads as we pray. Gracious Father in heaven, this Sabbath day, we're asking that you will let it rain. We're asking that you would let the Holy Spirit pour down upon us because of the time in which we're living. Lord, we need your blessings. We need you in our lives. So let it rain and let it pour. Be with your manservant today as I bring on your behalf that which you have given me, and may it enrich those who are here, and may we all be inspired to take notice and be alarmed as to the times in which we find ourselves now living. Bless us to this end, we do pray, and also pray that you would be with Pastor Buford as he brings your message to another congregation this day. Bless us both, dear Lord, to rightly represent you. In Jesus' name we do pray. Amen. How far are we from our destination? And are we almost there? Today I want to speak to you on this subject about the distance we are from our destination and just how close are we? Now, some may be asking, well, what is the destination that you're speaking about, Pastor? That destination is our heavenly home. Now, as most of you all know, I lost my younger brother, Harry, around the end of January, and even though he had a chronic illness, we were not expecting his death at that time and so soon. It took us all by surprise. Because of the pandemic, my wife and I decided that we were going to drive up to New York for his funeral because we did not care to be in any close quarters inside of a plane. So we decided we would make that 950-mile drive to New York. And when our daughter heard of it, our middle daughter, Chantel, who lives in Huntsville, when she heard of it, she and my son-in-law said that they, along with their children, would be coming too. She said, "You and Mom are not going to go to New York alone." And then our eldest daughter, who lives in Nashville, said, "Dad, Mom, the kids and I are going to ride up with you also. We'll meet you along the way in Knoxville, Tennessee." Now, I want you to mind that it was after our van accident that I have shared with you on a number of occasions, which occurred some 4 years ago, where we were all driving in one vehicle, the van, to New York. The only one that was not in the van with us was my wife and my youngest daughter, Dion, who were already in New York. And they were there for my brother-in-law's funeral. So we were heading up to New York for a funeral, and that's when we had that terrible terrible accident. My brother-in-law had died unexpectedly from a heart attack while he was at work, and so it was decided after that accident that all the family would never travel a long distance in one vehicle again because we were all almost all lost. So the decision was made for this last trip that we would go as a caravan in three separate vehicles. It took us 2 days going and coming because we split the trip up. We broke it in half. We stopped in Roanoke, Virginia, and we stayed in a hotel at night. We did it both ways. And as we traveled, we communicated through walkie talkies that my son in law provided. And so in each car, we had walkie talkies and we communicated and we stayed within eye view of each other. We took turns taking the lead. My son in law and myself. Now, for those of you who have traveled with children, traveled with kids for any distant trip, you know there's always that proverbial question that kids always ask. Are we almost there yet? Are we almost there yet? How much further do we have to go? I remember on one road trip, my daughter Chantel and myself, we were driving out to California from Huntsville, and I was not even out of Huntsville practically. I was still on I-65, I believe. I think I was just reaching. I was still on I-565. It was just reaching, just getting past I-65 to go over the bridge. To go over the bridge, to take the bridge that would take us over into Decatur. Not hardly out of Huntsville yet. Still on ice, 565, ending at 65. When my little grandson asked that question, are we almost there yet? And I said, Christopher, you're in for a long drive. We're nowhere near there yet. So when we started out on this trip in January to go up to New York, initially there was excitement among the children. In their voices, they could be heard over the walkie-talkies when we started the trip. They were just excited and they were just, they were just elated about being able to take the trip. But eventually, when we would stop for fill-ups or bathroom breaks, the children would ask that question, how much further do we have to go? Are we there yet? Are we almost there? I'm getting tired. I have nothing to do. My legs are hurting. I'm cramped. And that's all we heard on the walkie-talkies, just all of this chatter. But after a while, my wife and I noticed that the chatter had died down. we didn't hear those questions any longer coming over the walkie-talkies, or even when we would stop for the bathroom breaks or to gas up. There were no longer these questions. As I said, when we started the trip, they were excited about going to New York and seeing their Aunt Dion, our youngest daughter, who had promised to do certain activities with them, even though this was to be a short, non pleasure trip. But now there was this mysterious silence on the walkie talkies. So Sister Bailey and I were wondering what happened. Why aren't the children asking those questions any longer? Remember, we had all five grandchildren with us in those cars, ages ranging from 6 to 13 years of age. But now there were no more questions regarding, are we almost there yet? How much further do we have to go? And so we were wondering why. You may be wondering why. Well, let me break the suspense. Let me tell you. There was no more chatter because their parents, daughters, and my son-in-law had given them some electronic gadgets, such as tablets and cell phones and that had all manner of games and activities on them for their entertainment. Those gadgets now had their attention and their focus. Their excitement and the anticipation of reaching New York had died down, and their focus had shifted from New York and from asking how much further do we have to go? Are we almost there yet? That had died down because now their focus was on all of those gadgets that they had received. Now, grant you, intermittently, two of the youngest grandchildren could be heard now and then over the walkie-talkie asking how much further, but by and large, the others were consumed with their gadgets. In other words, in a nutshell, their minds were now so occupied or distracted with their entertainment objects that there was no longer any focusing on the nearness of the trip or how close we were to New York City. As a matter of fact, for those who are familiar with the 950-mile drive to New York City, like brother and sister Scott or brother Daniel Jenkins, you know that when you approach the Goethals Bridge, you might as well say that you have arrived in New York, because on the other side of that bridge is Staten Island, which is one of the five boroughs of New York. Therefore, when we were getting to the Goethals Bridge, as we were getting ready to go over the Goethals Bridge, my wife announced over the walkie-talkie, we are now about an hour away from our destination. And the kids seemed surprised. Her announcement had caught them by surprise. Some had not noticed how close we were to our final destination because the gadgets had occupied their minds and distracted them. And the youngest ones had even fallen asleep with their gadgets on their laps still running. They were preoccupied. They had missed all of the signs indicating how much closer we were getting to New York. We had traveled over some 800 miles, and there were signs all along the way. In fact, once we got on the Jersey Turnpike, just as we went through the tolls and traveled a space, there was a sign on the side of the road that said New York City, 100 miles away. We had traveled over 800 miles, and now we were within 100 miles. We were nearing home. We were nearing our destination. And as we traveled on the Jersey Turnpike, as the signs would come up, New York City, 90 miles. New York City, 70 miles. The numbers were going down, but the older children had missed all of those signs along the way. And so as we were now on the Goethals Bridge, getting ready to head into New York, now only an hour away from our destination, they were surprised because they had been distracted by their gadgets. I want to talk a little bit about distraction. Someone here today knows that not too long ago, I got distracted by something. That'll be our secret. But define distraction is a process of diverting the attention of an individual or a group from a desired area of focus. That's what the dictionary says. And thereby locking or diminishing the reception of the desired information. That's distraction. Distraction is caused by the lack of ability to pay attention, the lack of interest in the object of attention, or the great intensity, novelty, or attractiveness of something other than the object of attention. That's attraction. The distraction. The object of our attention, my dear friends, today, I want to say, the object of our attention as Christians should be the second coming of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, who we studied about in Sabbath school this past weekend and this morning, who's done so much for us, and who said, I go to prepare a place for you, that where I am, there ye may be also. I want to be there. How about you? And the signs of the times are telling us that we are nearing that home. In Luke, the 21st chapter, verses 25 through 34, Jesus gave indicators or signs that would help us to recognize how close we are to our final destination, how close we are to our heavenly home. And in verse 34, he gives us this warning that we should not become so distracted by the lure of earthly things or earthly distractions that we lose focus of where we are on the prophetic timeline. He's given us a prophetic timeline. In the book of Daniel, it is laid out so plainly, and that's why we have started in our Thursday meetings to revisit the book of Daniel and also the book of Revelation, so that we can maintain our sense of where we are in terms of prophetic history. I dare say that when it comes to the image of Daniel, the second chapter, where we have been told of the nations that would come and fall, I dare say that as these nations have come and these nations have fallen exactly as God predicted they would through the prophecy of Daniel and the image, that today we exist in the very toes of that image. In fact, I might say that we're at the end of the image toenails, We are living at that time when that rock that was plucked out of a mountain without a hand, that time when it's prophesied that Jesus will set up his everlasting kingdom. That's where we are right now. But today, in today's environment, there are so many things pulling for our attention. There are so many things pulling at our attention that easily distracts us from our focus and our walk with Christ. So often we are distracted by trying to obtain so much of what we call the good life or things that we absolutely need. In fact, according to psychologists, there are three basic main needs for humans. What are those three basic main needs that psychologists say we are in need of? Food, clothing, and shelter. Now, while there are many individuals struggling to make ends meet, it's amazing how we have added other items to these three basic needs that psychologists have identified, such as the latest and most costly smartphone with all the bells and whistles, the need for an 80-inch or greater flat screen TV, the need for Google Speaks, wherein we can just ask Google and she does it for us or finds it for us. In fact, Google has become so sophisticated that our youngest daughter, Dion, in New York, so she was in her home one day and she just started humming a song in her home to herself. And all of a sudden, her system began to play the song. And she was shocked. What had happened? And so, thinking that it might have been just by coincidence, she decided to sing another song. And when she started to sing another song, her device began to play that song as well. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. I remember when shopping with my wife one day at a ladies' store. Upon arrival home after going to that store, a message came across my phone asking, how was your visit to that particular store? How was your visit to the store today? It was scary. It was scary because I had not purchased anything in the store. I had not even used my phone in the store. Yet, my phone was questioning me about my visit to that store on that particular day. I want to say that these devices are not bad in themselves. I'm not condemning them. But what I want to say is that we must not get so distracted by our fascination with them and by our fascination with the speed of technology today that we get totally absorbed in this technology with all of our time, and we do nothing. I see neighbors in my community as they walk their dogs, that they cannot walk their dogs without their cell phones up to their ears, cannot walk their dogs without looking at the screen on the cell phone. And there's been times when individuals have almost been hit by a bicycle or by a car because they were steadily gazing at the cell phone. These devices are not bad in themselves. I'll say that again. But we must not get so fascinated and distracted by them that they totally absorb all of our time. Last week, we landed another very sophisticated robot, uh, on the planet Mars. But if we're not careful, all these accomplishments can become distractions if not properly prioritized. Whether we have surplus or are lacking, I should say, whether we have surplus or lacking, or whether we have just enough to get by, I want you to know that we can still get distracted by things that we have. And so we must be careful. And we must remember that these distractions can cause us to miss out on the time that we spend with God. And speaking about the three basic human needs that I just shared with you, according to the psychologists, there was one need not mentioned, which I want to suggest, and which I won't even suggest it, I'll state it. There's one need that they did not mention, which is really the greatest human need of all. And that is the need of having a personal relationship with God and the need of redemption and salvation. Our ultimate focus needs to be on a new heaven and a new earth. That's our ultimate destination. Anything causes us to lose our focus on our relationship with God and his ultimate destination for us constitutes a distraction. And so we must be careful in how we use our time. Time lost can never be retrieved. Therefore, we must be wise regarding what we put our time and energy into. In fact, in Ephesians, the 5th chapter and the 16th verse, we are told the importance of being wise and the need of us to redeem the time, because time is short. Let us understand that it is Satan's purpose to distract us from just how close we are to our destination. It is his strategy to put things in our lives to distract us so that we do not realize that we're going over the Gotham Bridge, as it were, into New York, our stated destination. There are so many distractions today. But by way of examples, let me just share with you two that comes to mind right now. One, the COVID-19 pandemic. And two, the political unrest in our country. I think I can dare say that not in the history of our nation have so many people given so much time to the news in regards to the pandemic and the political unrest. For those of us who are semi-sequestered in our homes, there is not just a fear of contracting the virus, but the ever-present seemingly distraction of it in our daily lives. Every day, probably most of us start out our day turning on our devices, going to Microsoft and thinking about COVID-19. What is the latest vaccine? Is it really safe? Will it change our DNA if taken? Will it be used as a tracking mechanism for world control or 666? Is it really safe? Will it cause us to act differently? Will it be tracking our bodily mechanisms? When will I be eligible to get the vaccine? When will we be able to return to what was called a normal life? When will the mask mandate end? Every day we're bombarded with these questions. We heard just this past week that Mississippi and Texas will be ending the mandate for wearing masks in public places. Out in California, where the governor is removing the mask mandate, you have major stores like Target and Macy's and others that said you may lift it, but we will still require it. Also, possibly in April, here in our own state, our governor has talked about also ending that mandate. And then the looming question is whether or not there will be an increase in COVID-19 cases when the mandate ends, even though over 16.3% of Americans have received the vaccine. Then there is the political unrest that I've mentioned. Political unrest looming over our nation. Even though the election is over, we still have Republicans versus Democrats. Questions are still being asked. What is the former president Trump going to do next? Will he be prosecuted now that he is out of office? Will there be another siege of the Capitol building? We have whites versus other racial groups, and the list of distractions just go on and on and on and on and on. And these happenings are causing fear, frustration, and anger. It is definitely, my friends, necessary for us. I want to say, in sincerity, it is definitely necessary for us to keep abreast of what's happening and the impact that they would have for the time in which we are living, but not to the extent that they consume all of our time and our thoughts to the expense of not spending quality time with our gods, with our God. Even events are causing frustration and anger and hopelessness among many individuals. Many individuals imagine and that God has been marred by the behavior of some Christians. But I want to say that in the midst of all of these distractions, that distractions are not new. They are often the master ploy of our enemy himself, Satan. They're the master ploy of Satan to turn our minds from Christ and our mission regarding the gospel unto all of the world and our ultimate destination of heaven. If we think about the story of Nehemiah, there we can see distraction actually in action. In the story of Nehemiah, distraction was in action throughout the whole book. We know the story. We know how despondent Nehemiah had become when he heard about the walls of Jerusalem being down and the work of rebuilding that was needed. But that the Jews that had been left there did not have the necessary supplies nor the manpower to protect them as they were carrying out that work. And in that situation, Nehemiah's despondent countenance caught the attention of the king, who, upon hearing Nehemiah's story, decided to supply all that Nehemiah stood in need of. That sounds like another king that I know who has promised us to supply all of our needs according to his riches and glory. The king provided a letter of protection for Nehemiah for traveling to Judah, as well as a letter so that a letter of authority so that Nehemiah could get timber from the keepers of the forest for supplies and also provided military protection. Sounds like another king that I've read about who promised his people, I will never leave you nor forsake you. But there we see God's promise in action. In Philippians, the 4th chapter, verses 6 through 9, we're told, be not careful or anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be known unto God. But God shall supply all of your needs according to his riches in glory. And so, yes, we get caught up. We get caught up with what's going on with the pandemic, and yes, we get anxious about the political atmosphere in Washington. But the Word of God says, "Be careful and anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, we are to let our requests be made known unto God." Notice the promise that was made to Nehemiah. All your needs in this situation, God, by way of the king, supplied Nehemiah with everything that he needed for the journey and the rebuilding of the wall. And I just want to say, truly, based on Nehemiah's experience and based on my own experience, and based on the experience of all of those in the Ephesus church who have taken God at his word and have proven to be faithful, thus allowing God to prove himself faithful to them, that God has proven to truly be a promise keeper. In Nehemiah's situation, I want us to notice that he fasted also. He fasted and prayed for wisdom regarding the plight of Jerusalem. And even before answering the king, Nehemiah prayed again. I want to say, my dear friends, that we will meet many challenges and distractions along our Christian journey in carrying out the great gospel commission. And if we allow distractions that so often are subtle and unassuming to come and consume our thoughts and time, before we know it or realize it, we will be going in a path down another direction. And so I just want to say that it is imperative that we take time for prayer. It's imperative that we take time to study God's word. It is only by a personal relationship with God that is developed through prayer and Bible study, not just a quick prayer or one or two verses from the Bible that will help us to get started on our day, but will not be enough to help us to avoid the distractions that Satan will send us in so many forms, even in individuals that are near and close to us. We know that Nehemiah prepared for his journey. He gave thought to what was needed and was able to respond to the king's question regarding his needs. And so we too must take time to prepare for our journey. We also note that once Nehemiah arrived in Jerusalem, he surveyed what was needed to be done and then presented his mission to the people and to the priests and assured them that God was with him. And they responded with saying, "Let us rise up and build the wall." My appeal to us today, as I'm coming down to a close, my appeal to us today in the midst of all of the distractions of life, I want us to know that God wants us to build a wall also today. Not a wall to separate us from the needs of people, but a wall of protection for those that he has called upon us to witness to. As Nehemiah built a wall to protect the Jews from their enemies, so we too are called upon to build a wall of protection from the fiery darts of the devil that are thrown forth in the communities in which we live. Nehemiah built a wall to protect the Jews from their enemies, so we are to build a wall of the gospel truth, gospel message to the hopeless. We are called to surround and protect and uplift those who are hungry, the homeless, the dejected, and those who are just going through the motions of life. Those that sisterhood and the others see when food is being passed out at the church on those given days, and individuals are arriving in their cars and with their grocery carts and on their crutches even. We are commissioned by God to remember the poor, the oppressed, the naked, and the hungry, as he has instructed his people in Isaiah, the 58th chapter, in the 6th verse. If we are not careful to do what God has called upon us to do, we will allow the distractions, the other distractions of life, to prevent us from keeping sight of not only our destination, but also the purpose that God has called us forth for, and also just how close we are to the end of our destination. Praise God and praise God. The opposition and the discouragement that the builders in Nehemiah's day met from open enemies and pretended friends were typical of the experience that the people of God have met all down through the ages, even to this day. And so today we must be aware. We must be aware that Satan isn't just using technology, such as our iPhones and our Facebook accounts and Twitter and Instagram and the likes, or racism or political unrest, or even the virus as a means of distraction for us as Christians. But frequently, he deters us even as we attempt to carry out the gospel commission and various ministries of the church. He uses such distractions as criticism, fault finding, gossiping, doubters, naysayers, just as he did to Jeremiah. And unfortunately, some of us get caught up in these tactics. And before we know it, we become so preoccupied with these tactics that we lose our desire to work in the church as well as to witness to others in the streets. We begin to lose sight of our journey and ultimate destination and goal. Even more unfortunately, these tactics that we participate in or stir up not only cause us to lose sight of the journey, but have caused others to lose focus just as well. So remember, Satan knows from personal experience that our ultimate destination, heaven, is a beautiful place, one that he cannot be a part of in the future. So he uses everything and anything to distract us because he wants to cause us to become lethargic, even by such things as involvement in unhealthy relationships, compromise and habits, and participation in activities that we know are wrong and not pleasing to God, but we rationalize that these things are just small things. Fear, doubt, lack of trust in God's word and his promises to distract us from our path on our Christian journey. In Prophets and Kings, page 638, we're told that Nehemiah, whose soul was in the enterprise that he had undertaken, did not allow himself to become distracted. And so my question, my friends, saints of God, is our whole heart, soul, and mind dedicated to reaching our final destination? Are we just as excited as when we first started out? Like the children, when we first started out on that trip to New York, they were excited, but eventually they grew tired and bored. When we first accepted Jesus Christ, can you remember how excited you were when you started out on your journey for heaven? The signs and mile markers of events are revealing to us today that we're almost there. Our journey is coming to an end. But are we too preoccupied with other things to even take notice? I want to say, just as our daughter Dion, when she heard that we were coming up to New York, just as she was so excited about all of us as a family getting together, that she stayed up night and day during the week prior to our arrival, preparing for us. And her preparation was truly beyond our expectations. But I want to ask this question: how much more is God's excitement for us as his children to reach the end of our ultimate journey, which is heaven, where we can reside with him in the place that he has gone to prepare for us. When we recognize where we are, we need to be excited. We need to get all excited about this. In John 14, 1 through 3, Jesus said, I'm going away, but I will come again. I'm preparing a place for you. That includes each of us today, my friends. Just as our daughters told us when they said they were going to New York. And they said when we were going to New York, you guys can't go alone. Well, we can't go along to our ultimate journey either. We have been commissioned to go, to teach and preach the gospel so that others can go along with us. And going along to encourage us and protect us along the way is none other than Jesus Christ himself. And so I close with this question. Are we watching the signs? Are we watching the signs? Are we preparing so that we are ready when Jesus comes? Or are we so preoccupied and distracted that we're growing weary? Going back to Nehemiah, I want to take note that when the king noticed Nehemiah's countenance and upon hearing the reason why, and Nehemiah's desire to assist his people, the first question the king asked in Nehemiah, the first chapter before agreeing to provide for his needs was, how long will your journey be? And when will you return? And today, many of us are asking, how long? How much longer will our journey be? When will we reach our final destination? When will Christ return? Like Nehemiah, we must not let distractions divert us from the task at hand. Because he that promised will keep his promise. So in Revelation 16, when the persecuted saints asked, how long, O Lord? And I know that there are many today who are getting wearied and tired with the pressures of this world, the loss of loved ones, sickness, and you name it. I want to say to you today, I want to say to all of us today, be of good courage. We are almost at the end of the journey. We are approaching our destination. Don't you get weary, because there's a great camp meeting on the other side. Our youngest daughter, who I'm speaking about again, Dion, was so excited that we were coming to New York and that we would all be together again, because it had been 2 years since all of us had been together as a family. She, once again, immediately began making preparations for our arrival in New York. And I would have to say again that when we arrived, it was beyond our expectations. Apostle Paul tells us that eye have not seen, nor ear heard, nor has it entered into the hearts of men the things that God has prepared for those that love him. Dion's focus was to help us focus on the joy of being together at the loss of our loved one. The other day, as my wife and I were reflecting on the trip, And even more after Dion surprised us this week with a beautiful book that she had designed and then professionally put together and sent out to a company to be put in hardcover that was entitled Cherish Memories, with pictures of my brother and myself and other members of the family from our childhood up to this present time, with beautiful words and comments to accompany the pictures. It brought about a certain sadness and a longing, along with cheer, as we reflected about the destination of heaven, where there will be no longer any death or sorrow or separation. We thought about the kids' initial excitement and their gadgets, and we asked ourselves the question, how many of us are like the kids who were initially excited about the trip but later became easily distracted? Are there things in our lives that are distracting us from our final destination? Another lesson from Nehemiah's journey is that we must realize the importance of our work. When Nehemiah's enemies tried to get him to come down, he responded that he could not come down because he was doing a great work. I want us all to be mindful today of the greatness and the value of our work. We cannot afford to give up now. We cannot come down off of the walls, but we must continue to work, for the night cometh when no man can work. May God bless us to this end. Let us pray. Gracious Father in heaven, in a world of so many voices, amidst the choices of so many distractions, Lord, help us to stay focused. Jesus is coming. The end is even at the door. Let us not grow weary in well-doing. But bless us, dear Lord, to get excited. Help us, dear Lord, to yearn for the experience of the 70 that went out and came back rejoicing and saying even the demons are subject to your name. Bless us to be able to continually report back to you, our Lord. Here's another one. Here's another one. Here's another one. And even greater, here am I. In Jesus' name, do pray. Amen.